Hello again, and part three in an epic mini-series on revival, church revival, um, an upsurge in the interest in and influence of Christianity in the country. I did say that I was going to talk about witch hunts and witch hunting, and I'm going to do that very briefly, perhaps from a slightly unusual perspective. Okay, everybody knows what a witch hunt is. There were literal witch hunts in the Middle Ages. Whether they caught any actual witches is open to debate. And what they actually did to curtail the satanic power of Satan is extremely open to debate. They were, of course, very bloodthirsty, aggressive, hostile, and quite ungodly movements. They perpetrated a great deal of violence, and they created a culture of tyranny and oppression. In other words, witch hunts are not good things. They're not masterminded and driven by good people. They are driven by people who want power. The backdrop of all this stuff that I'm doing is oppressive and fear-based cultures in the church, toxic leadership, leaders who've gone rogue, bullying an abusive church, which is more common and more prevalent than you might think, and more church organisations than you might think are facing in that direction, especially those that aspire to grow to any extent, because that process quickly becomes very performance driven. And it quickly becomes very oriented around a dominant, charismatic leader who can cast a vision and get everybody marching in time to the same beat. Then that person gets power and they fall down into a stable bottom of a slope where they're in control, they brook no dissent, and everybody who opposes them is a witch who must be purged. Now, paradoxically, those people in power, dominant and influential people in churches, have kind of done a preemptive strike on the witch hunt thing. And so anyone who stands up to them and any kind of movement that begins to call attention to their misdeeds, and I'm quoting one of the Bible writers there, and curb their misbehaviour and put an end to their misdemeanours, discipline their appetites, they will accuse of witch hunting, of attacking the church, and of being motivated by violence and lust and for power and control. So, through a slightly roundabout way, this brings me to the point of this episode, which is kind of, it would be stupid of me to call it a warning to the church, because very few people will ever see this. It's more a capturing of a thought. I would love to see the church deal with the culture of abuse that it has enabled for many years. But the church can't do it, not as it is on its own. That's where the idea of praying for revival comes in, because the church is going to need miraculous supernatural help if it's going to do this. And that's because church, I'm afraid, I hate to tell you this, but you can't put in place structures and processes to stop people bullying from the pulpit, to stop charismatic and influential individuals from achieving positions of power and abusing them. You can't do it, because those people will run rings around you. They already own much of the narrative. They already control a lot of the culture. They have the means to wrap these processes around their little fingers and use due process and the doctrine of all forgiveness and we're all sinners to protect themselves, and then use the power that it gives them to attack anyone who's trying to moderate them as their critics, as they will put it, their attackers, to figuratively speaking, burn them as witches. They will just own the process. They are cleverer and quicker and shrewder than you are, church. And so you're going to need something that you haven't got. So I want to talk about a church revival. Well, there's a passage of ancient scripture, ancient wisdom literature, that Christians, and indeed Jews before Christians, have used for many, many centuries, thousands of years. And it says, famously said, this is famous in Christian circles, if my people, and this is God talking to a Hebrew king, King Solomon, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, and then I will heal their land, and whatever it goes on. And people, Christians, like to think of that as about revival. But they don't humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways. They try and humble the homosexuals and the abortionists and pray that the government turns from their wicked ways. Church doesn't know how to deal with the wicked ways that go on inside church because they have wormed themselves in. They're part of the fabric. So I maybe do one more on why, if there is a revival, I hope it doesn't happen to evangelicalism as it currently stands.